Hello, I have a question for you. When you think of the planet Saturn, what comes to your mind if you are a student of astrology or a professional astrologer? Some of us think Saturn, the great malefic, it tests us, it challenges us, sometimes puts limits on us. What is the real fundamental thing going on with Saturn? And or is there a fundamental thing, or can it just take many different kinds of expressions? Here's my view on Saturn. I think that what Saturn does is it defines us. It cuts out anything that's superficial, unnecessary, maybe just things we're just choosing not to do because we want to focus on one thing. So, for example, when we ask a child, what are you going to be when you grow up? Which, in other words, means what kind of profession will you go into or what kind of activity will you be engaged in? And the child may say, oh, I'll be a nurse or a doctor or a teacher, whatever they come up with. That's a decision. That's a decision where a person chooses to leave certain things out. Maybe that child also has an aptitude for sports or music or any number of things. But we're in a finite body. We can only do one thing at a time. We cannot do multiple things at one time or be in multiple places. We try to pick out a creative solution to do what would be most fulfilling, most meaningful. So we choose something because we have more potential and opportunity than we can possibly express. We take this for granted. Every moment of our lives, we're making some kind of decision about what we think we should focus on. And that, I believe, is the essence of Saturn. Saturn is this process that we take for granted, that we're always selecting, choosing. We decide that we will go to work in the morning, that, that's a decision. Maybe it's an easy to make decision. We decide what to eat for lunch. We're deciding all of the time. We're trading off things and making a definition. That process of deciding, of defining, is the process of Saturn. Now, Saturn is sometimes looked at limitation. Is there a limitation there? Well, in a way, we are. We're definitely limiting ourselves, but we're not limiting ourselves for the purpose of, well, let's just limit ourselves. Let's just constrain ourselves and frustrate ourselves and see if we can live through it, as if Saturn is this malefic force in the sky that's going to descend on us, periodically. It's that Saturn is there all the time, cutting away, defining, deciding. It's like a chisel to a stone that makes the statue, that defines us and directs us in our lives. That's what Saturn does. It's not an inherently malefic force. So that's one of the radical things that I'm going to suggest you. Oh, I don't know if it's that radical because the idea that Saturn's not inherently malefic, I think, is becoming more popular over time. And this is the view that I have. Saturn is not malefic. What it's trying to do may not be pleasant all the time, but it has a positive purpose. Now, we have a lot of reasons. I say we because I'm not the only person involved in doing this kind of research and analysis and discovery. We have a lot of reasons for believing that Sun-Saturn is about defining us. For one thing, it fits the data. One thing we've done is we've gone into the data collected by Francoise and Michel Gauquelin. They collected data on people who were very successful in different professions, like scientists, painters, musicians, actors, and other professions. And we have that data that they collected. It's in the Sirius software and the Kepler software. It's already in there. And I like to explore that data to see what the people have in common. So, for example, do painters have planets in the fifth house? Some astrologers associate the fifth house with creativity, or do actors have the ascendant or the ruler of the ascendant in Leo? We can explore the data and see what's going on. One of the things that we found in exploring the data is that Sun and Saturn are in a beat, you can call it a frequency, a vibration, according to the profession. Each profession has their own vibration. So scientists have Sun and Saturn in a 7 vibration or a 14 vibration. Now in the next slide I'll review what I mean by a vibration. But this is exactly what we would expect, because the 7 and 14 vibration incline a person to be quiet. Science is often done in a quiet atmosphere. Not always, but generally. And these are tendencies that we saw, that the scientists had Sun and Saturn in a 7 or 14 vibration. When we double the vibration, by the way, the basic meaning stays the same. Painters have Sun and Saturn, I'm talking about Sun and Saturn in all cases, in a 20 and 40 vibration. These are based on 5, which is playful and creative. Musicians have Sun and Saturn in 11, 22, or 45 vibration. These are moving and dynamic, and music is a moving art form. From one moment to the next, you have to play the next note. It's a dynamic art form which is appropriate for 11. And the actors have Sun and Saturn in 17 and 34 vibration. 17 is a love of stories and experiencing those stories and having empathy with them. And 17 shows up very often in counselors because of the empathy and interest in stories. Sometimes people involved in theater, and especially actors. So it all makes perfect sense, and it's Sun and Saturn. Is Saturn acting like a malefic and restricting and limiting the people? Well, in a sense, it is a limit. We're setting a definition, but it's not a limitation in a negative sense. It's defining ourselves to what is really important. So whatever Sun and Saturn are doing in your chart, whatever vibration they're in, is going to be a strong indication of what frequency you think is important, where you want to devote yourself. If it's in an 11, 22, or 11, 22, or 44 vibration, then the movement, the dynamic action is important, and music is a good outlet for that. Of course, the planets involved, in addition to Sun and Saturn, usually there's more than 2 planets, are very important, but Sun and Saturn are especially important for what you choose, what you decide, and how you define yourself and what you think is important, because that's what Saturn's really about. Saturn is not this big bad thing in the sky, this great malefic that's just bringing horror into your life and seeing if you can survive it and seeing if you can be mature enough to get through it. It's just simply defining and making choices. Why am I so sure of this? Because it fits the data. It fits what we see. Now, let me give you an idea of what I mean by 7 vibration, or any vibration. Suppose the Saturn is at the beginning of Taurus, like it is in this chart on the left side of the wheel, and Saturn is about 51.5 degrees later, over here about 21 to 22 Gemini. That's 1/7 of a circle. So that means Sun and Saturn are in a 7 vibration. Or if it's 2/7 or 3/7 in either direction. So 1/7, 2/7, or 3/7, either with Saturn ahead of the Sun in the zodiac or behind the Sun in the zodiac, that would be Sun and Saturn in a 7 vibration. The 14 vibration is doubling it, so it would be halfway between these would be the 14 vibration. Those are the vibrations that are common between Sun and Saturn for scientists. For the musicians, it's 20 and 40. So we divide the circle into 40 pieces, and if the Sun and Saturn land right on those points, it's in a 40 vibration. And the orb that we allow, the tolerance we allow, gets smaller and smaller for the more pieces we divide it into, so that any vibration occurs equally often by chance. So what we're finding, let me repeat this because it's amazing, we find in this Gauquelin data, this data of the very, very successful people, that Sun and Saturn are in the vibrations we expect for the different professions more often than other professions. It's really exciting and wonderful that the astrology really works, and we have discovered that there are these intricate, beautiful tapestry of vibrations. We can call them vibrations or frequencies or beats. We could also call them harmonics. I prefer the words frequency, vibration, or beat because that's what it is. It's a beat or frequency in the chart, because when the planets are separated by sevenths of a circle, they're in a 7 beat. It's as if the whole ecliptic plane is vibrating, and when you cut it into these pieces, it vibrates at that beat, at that frequency. Okay, now these findings that for example, that actors have Sun and Saturn in 17 or 34 vibration, this is fundamental, basic, straightforward vibrational astrology. This is not some esoteric, far-flung idea. We use these ideas as standard basic concepts in the same way that most astrologers would look at your sun, moon, and ascendant. Because in vibrational astrology, we're seeing this astrology chart as this embodiment of a music of the spheres, of this symphony of frequencies, and we find what frequencies are active and how they're flowing through the person, and we see what wavelength the person is literally on. And the Sun-Saturn vibration is very important for determining the best career choice. It's that simple. Why? Because Saturn's defining us. Saturn shows what is most important. Saturn cuts out the glamour, what's unnecessary, and it focuses us on what has lasting importance. How do I know this? Because it fits the data. It fits our experience counseling people and also our research studies, such as the one I just described on the Gauquelin data. By the way, at the astrosoftware.com, at www.astrosoftware.com, if you go to articles and videos in the menu at the top, and then click on articles, and scroll down to the 5th article, article number 5, Astro Signatures in the Gauquelin Data Revealed, and you click on that. Here is the article written, what did I say, 2007, I think? Yeah, in 2007, this article was written going through the data. It's kind of a tedious article for many people. It goes into all the technical analysis. You don't need to read this article, but if anybody wants to verify what the research is or replicate it or build upon it, this is a detailed explanation. Here at the end of the article is the summary of some of the results. And we see the Sun-Saturn in these vibrations, as well as some other planets. A lot of planets tending to line up in these vibrations. Okay, so Saturn's defining us. It's cutting away everything else and helping us choose and focus. It's like a block of stone, and Saturn is like the chisel that cuts it away to bring out a statue out of that stone, which is a beautiful process, and that's the process of Saturn. Now, why does Saturn have such a bad reputation? If it's doing such a beautiful, wonderful thing, why do people dread Saturn? One of the big reasons is because of transits. So transits means where a planet is at a given time. So if today Saturn is at the same place in the zodiac as an inner planet is when you were born, we say that transiting Saturn is making an aspect to an inner planet, or if it's crossing an angular house cusp. And what is Saturn doing? It's taking things away that might be superficial, materialistic, that are not meaningful, or you're not valuing them, and it is limiting you or cutting out to define what's really important. And it's a time to make decisions. When there's a Saturn transit, you decide what is really important. That's what's going on. So we do not like having our toys taken away. We do not like having things removed from our lives. And that's why we tend to not like Saturn. Also, Saturn's not interested in whether we're having fun or not. Saturn's just interested in whether our lives are meaningful and deep and having a lasting positive effect. That's Saturn's purpose. So many times it is not fun. Now, to demonstrate this idea and to research it a little bit further, for this video, I decided to take Venus-Saturn for no particular reason. I just said, let's take an inner planet. Let's do Venus-Saturn, and let's do conjunctions. I could have said conjunctions, oppositions, or squares. For no particular reason, I just said, let's look at conjunctions, and let's see among thousands of people who have AA accuracy. There's almost 20,000 people in the Kepler and Sirius programs with a birth time from a birth record or birth certificate, what we call AA accuracy. And out of those, probably half or maybe a fourth of them have a lot of biographical data. So I'll have the software, I'll go into the research feature and pick out the charts with the closest Venus-Saturn conjunctions, and let's see if their emotional expression or some aspect of Venus, is it limited, is it restricted, or is it well defined and serious and focused in on what's really important. So there's some overlap in these ideas, but there's also some differences. And these are 5 people that we do have some biographical information about. When you go to Wikipedia and so on, you can find out information. And what we like to do in this kind of research is analyze these charts, because we're not cherry picking. We're forcing ourselves to deal with the data. We're a more data driven, more evidence based, to see if our ideas will really hold up. And what I'm going to do in this video, in order to keep the video from going on for hours and hours, is just look at the first one. The person with the strongest Venus conjunct Saturn, and let's see what makes sense for him. You might say this is anecdotal evidence, but there's a big difference between usual anecdotal evidence, which is that I'm not picking the chart. I'm forcing myself to see what appears to work well for these charts. Okay. And by the way, not picking the data, forcing yourself to analyze the charts, really helps improve your astrology, because you're data driven, you're more evidence based, and you're really seeing if your ideas work. Okay, so let's look at this guy. Valentin Le de Saussa. Sorry, I don't know the French pronunciation, but de Saussa means boneless. So he's Valentin the Boneless. This obviously is a nickname. And from Wikipedia, I'll read about him and why he has this nickname. Quote, he acquired his stage name because of the elasticity of his articulations. Oh, let me tell you, stage name. He's a dancer in the Moulin Rouge in Paris. When the Moulin Rouge was first opening and being developed in the late 1800s, he was one of the first dancers there, and most of the dancers were women. There were a few men, so he's one of the few men dancers in the early stages of the Moulin Rouge. Okay. All right, so with his lengthy limbs, he could perform difficult contortions with unusual grace, almost as if he were boneless. Moving from position to position with astonishing fluidity and beauty, usually wearing a black suit and top hat, he was much admired. Let me interrupt right there. This does not sound like restriction. And furthermore, when we look at his chart, it's in Capricorn. So I did not ask the software to only show the conjunctions in Capricorn, but we got kind of a bonus here, because being in Capricorn makes those Capricornian, Saturnian, rigid kind of qualities even stronger. So if he is rigid, if he is limited in some way, it's more subtle than the fluidity. There must be something in his chart that's making him more fluid. Now maybe you could say it's the Aquarius Pisces, but let's be realistic about it. Do all people with Aquarius and Pisces have this incredible fluidity and dexterity, and they're called the boneless? I don't think so. So what's going on with his Venus-Saturn? Why is he have many just of the opposite traits of what we expect? So this kind of research is qualitative research. It's not statistical. It's not measurable. What makes this kind of research very powerful is that we're not cherry picking the data, and we're trying to make sense of the data we have with the people who are the strongest. The strongest Venus conjunct Saturn person is Valentin the Boneless. Okay, to continue. He never accepted pay for his extraordinary performances, as he danced merely for the love of it. He retired from the stage in 1895 and faded into obscurity. wow, he's fluid, he's graceful, he does these contortions with unusual grace, and he doesn't get paid for it? What's wrong with this Capricorn in the 10th house? They're supposed to be business oriented. So it's interesting that the key conspicuous things that have made him famous and have him going down in time, a historically important person, is are traits that are just the opposite. Maybe we could see that if we use modern astrology. We think Uranus rules Aquarius in some other way. But what we do in vibrational astrology is when there's a conjunction between the planets, and this is exact to the minute, we look at what vibrations are flowing through those two planets. Because when there's a conjunction, any vibration going through them is going through both of them, obviously, not just one. It's very, very powerful. So if the sun or the moon is, say it's 1/7 of a circle, or 1/5, or 1/9, 1/11, whatever vibration it is in relationship to Venus Saturn, it's in relationship to both. So what we do in vibrational astrology is we wait until we can look at the vibrations that Venus and Saturn participate in, and that will tell us what it's like. It's similar to the idea of look at the sign and house and the planet ruling. Well, here the planet ruling is Saturn, reinforcing the Capricorn. It's similar to that. We're going to look at something to get more information. Only I would say it's even more powerful than that, because we really know almost nothing about what this Venus Saturn is doing until we see its relationship to other planets to see what vibrations it is involved in. Okay, so so this is the rule. I've got it stated here on this slide. You cannot interpret the conjunction aspect by itself. You must look at the aspect patterns that it forms. Okay. So I figured he is a spontaneous dancer. I'm expecting Uranus to be aspecting Venus and Saturn, and the frequencies I'm expecting are 11, because as I mentioned before, 11 is involved in music, also dance. They're dynamic moving art forms. I'm expecting Uranus for the obvious reason that Uranus is spontaneous. It improvises, it's dynamic, and just fit his unusual way that he dances. 17, because 17 shows up in counselors, actors, and also performers very often. 5 based harmonics, which are creative, like 15, 25, 35, and 55. The 25 because he's inventive, the people who innovate with highly creative, unusual, new, fresh things. Often it's 25, which he is doing. 35 because that gives also control, and he's able to do this with discipline. 55 is a combination of the 11 and 5, and I would expect that. So those are the vibrations I'm expecting, and that's exactly what we find out. We find out that when we look at what we call harmonic chart, the 11th harmonic chart, the 17th harmonic chart, the 25th and 35th, we're going to see exactly what we expect. So in the 11th harmonic, we see Uranus getting involved with Venus and Saturn. In a 17 times 3 vibration, we're going to see Venus-Saturn combined with Moon-Uranus, which is fantastic for the spontaneous, expressive dancing that he does. And the 25th harmonic combines with Uranus, and this gives the creative innovation. Venus, Saturn, Uranus is common in music and dance, especially innovative. With the 25th, it very much describes him as well. So the kinds of vibrations we expect are exactly what's going on. And what we're going to see, first I'm going to show you these harmonic charts quickly, but there's something really exciting that I'm leading up to, which is that we have the birth chart for his dance partner, a lady named Louise Weber, who went by the nickname the Glutton. Not the nicest nickname in the world. So we have the Boneless and the Glutton were a dance partners, with incredible fame and success and talent. And whenever there is a partnership like this, you will see that those vibrations that are important in the person's chart combine with the other person's chart. And what we're going to see is that it's especially the 25th harmonic. It's amazing. Louise, I'll call them Valentin and Louise. Louise has the same planets in the 25 vibration. It's Sun, Venus, Saturn, and Uranus. The same 4 planets, and they aspect each other. Well, what I'm saying is this. In vibrational astrology, we find out what frequency you're on, what vibration you're on. We have an expression, what wavelength you're on. We literally find out what wavelength you are on and what planets are on that wavelength. And we see what it does. Sun, Venus, Saturn, Uranus, and 25th harmonic is likely to be an innovative kind of dance and music. If you watch the videos on the meanings of the planets and meanings of harmonics, that will become more obvious why that's true. Highly innovative. This dance couple has the same planets in the same vibration, and they overlap with each other. There's synastry as well as the same patterns. So, to review, we have this chart of Valentin. He has an exact Venus conjunct Saturn. In vibrational astrology, we don't know what that means until we see what frequencies those planets are on. They're on strong 11 frequencies combining with Uranus, 17 based frequencies with Moon and Uranus, 25 with Sun and Uranus, and also 35th has a Sun, Moon, Uranus as well. And that helps give him some of the discipline. So there are a lot of frequencies that are active in a chart. These are some of the most conspicuous ones, and they're describing conspicuously what is in his life. I'll show you these charts very quickly so you get an idea, and I'm going to focus mostly on the 25th harmonic because it's this and the 17 times 3 or 51 are 2 of the strongest. We'll focus on 25, and that's the one that combines with his dance partner, Louise. So let's look at these real quickly. Let's look at his 11th harmonic. This is not one of the most impressive ones in terms of what Valentin does, but we do see the Venus and Saturn. They will remain conjunct in every harmonic chart. Here they're conjunct with a 6-minute orb, and there's Uranus about 8 degrees away from the Venus and Saturn. 8 degrees in a harmonic chart is not particularly strong. We allow 16-degree orb. It gives a little bit of inclination to dance and music. This is not what makes Valentin an extraordinary dancer. It does give him some mild interest in dance. So this is not really one of the more impressive ones in terms of understanding who he is and why he does what he does. The 51st harmonic, which is 17 times 3, 3 means trine, smooth expression. We see exactly the planets we expect. Moon and Uranus are tightly conjunct at 5 and 6 degrees Scorpio, making very strong sextile aspects to the Venus-Saturn. So here we see the Moon, Venus, Saturn, Uranus. With the Moon, Uranus, this instinctive expressiveness through 17, which can spontaneously get into the story, get into the mood of what he's experiencing. So he can play the character. He can get into the who that character is. He's not just dancing one character every night. He's able to adapt himself, mold himself. That's what 17 is very good at. That's why they're actors. They can play different roles. This gives him the gracefulness and fluidity for playing different roles. It doesn't explain why he's so innovative, but it does show his spontaneity and his fluidity. Where does his innovation come from? Why is he not doing ballet or something like that? Which, or something a little more structured would allow for some spontaneity. Why is he so free-spirited and inventive? It's in the 25 vibration, because 25 is 5 times 5. It's the ultra creative. It's the innovative creative. And look at his 25th harmonic chart. This is his 25th harmonic chart, and it's showing the Venus Saturn, which are going to remain conjunct in every chart, opposite Uranus. And it's tight, 2-degree orb. That is showing innovative music, innovative rhythm, or dance. It's innovative activity usually related to a music or a beat. That's exactly what he does, and it makes a T-square with the Sun. So there's the Sun making a T-square, and the Sun is the key to your career. And there, by the way, is the Sun-Saturn involved. It's a weak square, but part of the T-square of Sun, Venus, Saturn, Uranus. And here we have the inventive, the creativity, the innovation in the dance and music. So because Uranus gets involved very strongly in with his Venus Saturn, it loosens it up, it makes it electrical and spontaneous and fluid. Saturn is not rigid. Saturn, it only wants to define. In trying to define, you can run into rigidity, but the fact you're becoming defined does not necessarily mean you're going to be rigid and stiff, and that's a misunderstanding with Saturn. Saturn often leads to rigidity, but it doesn't have to. And Saturn-Uranus is freeing and liberating, is choosing your own way. And that's what we have here in this very powerful 4-planet pattern. Now here's the really cool thing that I'm leading up to. Let me show you Louise's chart, his dance partner. I'm going to jump right to her 25th harmonic charts and show this to you. What's very fortunate is we have a birth time from a birth certificate or birth record for both of them. So these are both recorded birth times. And look at, this is her 25th harmonic chart. Look at this. She has a Sun-Uranus aspect, and with red aspect lines going to a Venus-Saturn. This just blew my mind. Louise also has Sun, Venus, Saturn, Uranus, the same 4 planets in the 25 vibration that Valentin has. Same 4 planets. And they both have the Venus-Saturn conjunction. Of course, Valentin has Venus-Saturn conjunction because he has Venus-Saturn conjunct exact in the natal chart. It's so powerful. And in his 25th, it ties up with Sun and Uranus. Her Venus-Saturn conjunct in the 25th, and this red line, it's called a sesquiquadrat, means a hard aspect, driving aspect to Sun and Uranus, and it also to Jupiter. There's actually 5 planets. Same 4 planets in the same vibration. And when you get 2 people with the same 4 planets in the same vibration, they have an instant friendship, an instant connection, an instant same wavelength that they are on. What is this wavelength? It's the wavelength of Venus-Uranus, of spontaneity, and by the way, this is the Moulin Rouge, which has a kind of a racy, sexy tone to it. Venus, the spontaneity, the Saturn-Uranus, the freedom, the Sun-Uranus, wild, free, 25, inventive, out of this world, innovative, let loose. This is it. This is it. They have the same thing. Not only that, as if that's not enough to convince you that this stuff is important, not only do they have the same 4 planets, but there's synastry between it. Let me show you a bi-wheel of the 25th harmonics. I already captured this in my PowerPoint so that I could draw circles around the planets. Here it is. On the inside is Valentin's 25th harmonic chart. Remember I said he had a Sun, Venus, Saturn, Uranus? So in the inner ring, there's his Venus-Saturn conjunction at 21 Cancer, opposite Uranus at 19 Capricorn, and both of those square to the Sun at 18 Libra. And I put a little orange line here between Sun and Uranus showing that they're tightly squared, but they're also making the T-square to Venus and Saturn. So that's Valentin's Venus, Saturn, Sun, Uranus. And whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to click on that. Here we go. And on the outside, here it says outer ring is Louise Weber, this is her popular name, her 25th. So I'm comparing 25th harmonic to 25th harmonic. And as I mentioned, here's her Sun-Uranus conjunction at 6 Scorpio. And here's her Venus-Saturn conjunction at 21 and 23 Pisces. And remember that when we looked at her natal chart, we saw a red line, the sesquiquadrat line, connecting Sun, Uranus, and Venus, Saturn. Now look at this. Not only do they both have a Sun, Venus, Saturn, Uranus hard aspect pattern in the 25th, meaning they're both capable of unusual creativity and innovation. It could be in any creative area, but most likely in a dance or music. It's exactly what they do. And they do it the same way with the same planets and their synastry. This is incredible because sometimes you get the synastry, sometimes you get the same aspects. Here you get the same aspects, the same planets and the same kind of aspect, both having hard aspects between Sun, Venus, Saturn, Uranus, and synastry. It's like you can't get any more than this. And look at this. On the inside, his Sun and not his Sun, his Venus and Saturn at 21 Cancer tightly trine. I drew this line in here to her Venus and Saturn at 21 and 23 Pisces. So the patterns overlap. This means, by the way, that her Sun and Uranus are making other aspects in her Venus and Saturn to his planets as well. But that's the most obvious one that you can see right there. Okay. All right. There's also some other, like her Saturn is sextile his Uranus and so on. Anyway, there's other aspects as well. But that's the most obvious and conspicuous one. So to summarize, what we see here is that Saturn is not this big bad malefic in the sky who's going to make trouble. See if you can survive it, and then if you survive it, you become mature and it just wants to test you. Saturn's not trying to test you or be, like this disciplinarian and tough malefic out there. Saturn is helping you make decisions. It's helping you pick a way. It's helping you choose among this great number of potentials that every one of us has. And in Valentin's chart, he has the strongest Venus-Saturn conjunction among many thousands of people. He is not highly restricted or limited overall. I don't have complete biographical information about him, but that does not seem to be a big issue. And his Capricorn isn't overpowering him and making him extremely businesslike in his approach to life. He's looking for this freedom of expression, the vibrations that the person is on, their frequencies. We are literally on certain wavelengths. These wavelengths that we are on, they define our lives. They define the beat of our lives, the frequency of our lives, the motivations of our lives. He is on this free-spirited expressiveness in his 25th harmonic. That's what he does. He meets up with Louise Weber, who's got the same kind of pattern, almost exactly the same kind of pattern in her 25 vibration. They're on the same wavelength with the same planets, and they have powerful, beautiful synastry at the same time, and they become this captivating, powerful couple. When they stop dancing, she tries to develop her own enterprises and go off on her own. She fails at it. Once you have fantastic chemistry like this, you should realize that that's one of the keys to your success. They separate. She does not do well on her own. So, they have this magical thing that made them so successful together. By the way, this is a little more advanced, but just to show you one more thing. This is the 50th harmonic. Sometimes in vibrational astrology, we will double the vibration. We go from 25 to 50, and it makes the aspects more basic and easier to see. And in the 50th harmonic chart, so here it says Valentin in the inner ring, 50th harmonic, and Louise, this is her stage name, 50th harmonic in the outer ring. It makes it easier to see that she has a Venus-Saturn conjunction, square Sun-Uranus, and he has a Venus-Sun-Saturn, he has a Venus-Saturn-Uranus with Uranus tightly opposition Sun. They both have a Sun-Uranus aspect. They both have a Venus-Saturn aspect, and as we saw in the 25th harmonic chart, the Venus-Saturns all tie up with each other. Same four planets in extremely similar patterns, and with synastry between them. Anyway, I just thought I'd show you this little more advanced feature we use in vibrational astrology. We sometimes go up an octave to see things more clearly. But our main point, let's summarize, and then we're done with this tutorial video. Saturn is not a great malefic. Saturn is defining you. It will take away your toys. Saturn is rough. It insists that we do something of lasting, deep significance in life. So it takes away some of the fun, some of the play to do that. Where Saturn is strong in your chart, and particularly where the Sun-Saturn is strong, has a lot to do with the decisions you make, what can be important to you, what career decisions will work. And then we looked at who has the strongest Venus-Saturn of everyone. Valentin the Boneless. How ironic is that? The Boneless, when we associate Capricorn with bones, and his Venus-Saturn is in Capricorn, and he's just the opposite. He's called the Boneless. Very interesting irony there. But when we look at the vibrations, it all makes perfect sense, and we see the chemistry between these two very special people in this very special partnership. Okay, my friends, I hope that gives you some understanding for why we say in vibrational astrology that Saturn is not inherently malefic. It can be difficult to deal with, especially by transits sometimes, but it's not Saturn's intent to make our lives difficult. It's its intent to focus us in on something essential and important. Thank you very much, my friends. God bless. Namaste.